what are we looking for? We're looking for factors in the environment that we can take advantage of. These are called opportunities. The opportunities is inside the SWOT analysis, and the factors are inside the micro and macro environment. So this is my 9th time saying that, so I think eventually I won't spend in the details, but what I would just introduced before I started sort of related to that. So now I wanted you to look at a sizing of opportunities. So this is called the TAM, SAM, SUM. So on the right side, you have like the target of the TAM, SAM, SUM with, I use a color code, purple, blue, and then light blue. And on the left side, you have the wording of what these are. So let's say you are thinking of opening a hospital, or rather a clinic, where you will be helping celebrities, in particular singers, who are sort of being depressed because of the pandemic and the fact that they can't go and perform in front of their fans, and that the business is sort of more difficult than ever. And so you found the opportunity. What you found is more and more singers are getting depressed, according to this research published in 2021. Okay, that's the opportunity. It's a fact. Singers on average are more depressed than the average person, and singers in the past 12 months, depression has increased. And then you're a psychologist and you go, what do I do? What? Nothing. Bye. Or you say, I'm going to open a service specialized for singers. But what's the size of the opportunity? What do I want to go after? So this is the TAM, SAM, SUM. So the TAM is how many singers in the US. So that's a total addressable market. There's 8 million people that are amateurs, pro, and super pro that sings. Out of this is you're looking at the international, but you're looking at specifically, how many people that we can service. I mean, it's a clinic. I mean, we could do Zoom depression clinic services, but we're going to do it inside a clinic. So we need to look at a specific area. So we say California. So then in California, there is 1,800 singers. So that's your serviceable, available market, in the market that you can actually service, at least the first year, the second year, for a specific period of time. Eventually, you may go into other states. Eventually, you may go international. But right now, the serviceable area is Los Angeles. It's 1,800 artists. Then you say, what is the number of people that we're going to look at the first year, based on the amount of communication that we're going to do, on the amount of staff that we're going to have. And so we think that based on the what we've done in the past, we can probably reach 1% of these people. So then you take 1% of the SAM, and that gives you the sum. So the identification of what's the size of your opportunity, at least the first year, the second year, and the third year, is based on the deduction that you're doing based on looking at the overall market, then the focus market, and then the target that you're going to go after, having a penetration rate. And so it is as scientific as possible. It's not a pure science because it's based on deductions, based on inferences that you are making based on past activities to develop this penetration rate. So the penetration rate is something that you make a guess, a good guess. And it's not a good guess, just random good guess, but again, you're looking for something similar in order to define what would be the guess. So why you plan? You plan because there's lots of directions. What's a business plan? I discussed that before. It's a plan that has multiple documents inside. And then you have the marketing plan. What does the marketing plan do is it organizes things into different perspectives by looking at small things and big things. Small things are called tactics. The bigger thing of a tactic is a strategy. The bigger thing of a strategy is an objective. And therefore, there's objective that leads into strategies that leads into tactics. So what are the basic strategies? So the basic strategies are, let me jump to the basic strategies, are the 4 hands-off strategies. So it's market penetration, where you sell the same product to the same people. Product development, it's a new product for the same market. Market development, it's the same product for a new target, a new group of customers. And then diversification, which is a strategy which consists in selling a very different product. In fact, you're changing category of product. So they were air dryer, and now you're selling cheese. And for a different market, you were selling to women, and now you're selling to men. So diversification is more than just something new and for a new group of people. It's tremendously different new product, tremendously different new market. Okay, so far we've seen all of this. What happens is there is this concept of the star, the cash cow, the question mark on the dogs. The idea that you have different products in your portfolio. So in the case of Califia Farms, they have different products in their portfolio. So this SBU is very appropriate. So you want, for the project you're working on this semester, is to look at the product portfolio and see which product do they have as a star. So the star is the one that has a high market growth. So it's becoming more and more popular, and has a high market share. So the company has a significant percentage of the market, at least significant in comparison to the other product that they have. So it may not be, 50%. It may be still 4%, but that 4% is much greater than the other percentage that they would have for the other products, where the other product could be less than 1. So then you have the question mark, which is a product which is also in a high growth, but probably it's a product that they've just launched more recently, and they don't have a huge market share. Most likely, it could also be the fact that they launched it a while ago and they haven't innovated anymore recently, and therefore they need to innovate with this product in order to regain some. So let's say they're the first one selling this product. They are in high growth, they're lucky, they're surfing on a great opportunity. They gain quickly market share because they were the first one, but then their market share erodes away because they have competitor entering. And since they're entering, they are sharing the market, and they have been innovating because they came at a second, third stage, and they were the first one. They were in the first stage, but they haven't improved. So therefore, their market share is going to start eroding. Maybe it could be also that their price stayed high, because when you're the first one, usually you have the highest price, then your competitors come after and their price is a little bit lower. And as they are a little bit lower, they gain market share, you lose market share, and you didn't change your price. If you didn't change your price, you lose market share. And so you go from the star to the question mark. So what you do with your question marks, you make some modifications, or you lower the price so they go back to being stars. The cash cow is sort of the opposite of the question mark, in the sense that you have a very high market share, but it's in a low growth. So the question here is, how long is this product going to be still profitable? Because you have, you're like the last man or last woman standing, and you're gaining benefit from the fact that you're selling this product still, and you don't have too many competitors. So not too many competitors, not too many customers. How worth is it to keep working at this product? If you keep working at this product, it could be very good because you're sort of dominating a market which has a decreasing popularity, but you're still dominating it. The risk is when it becomes a dog. So when it becomes a dog is when essentially people want to pay the least as possible. There's less people. The type of people that buy this product are not the people that you can invest in. They're only buying it because it's cheaper, because they are sort of laggards, consumers, meaning consumers who are afraid of things that are new, they're more traditional. Okay, so the question with the dog product is, when do we phase out this product? How long do we keep dogs? The reason is, even if those dogs make a little bit of money, they still take away some of your resources. and therefore is when is it taking too much of your resources that you should let it go. Any question on this? So this is called the BCG matrix, and it comes from the acronym meaning Boston Consulting Group. The Boston Consulting Group is not a big four consulting firm. It's a much smaller consulting firm, but it's a firm that is more into working on strategies. So they're not into auditing as much as the big firm as we all know them. They're more into creating strategies, working on branding. So it's a smaller, more intimate consulting firm, which in many ways I think is more fun to work with than the big firm, because the big firm are like almost like the mass produce of consulting, versus the Boston Consulting Group is more of a dedicated and more strategic. So try to remember it. If you're looking for a job, that would be a great company to have a job. But because it's smaller, probably is much harder to get a job than Pricewaterhouse or Deloitte or something like that. Okay, so this I just explained. Here's an example of probably a brand, a company that you don't know very well, but I wanted to bring something different. Royal Enfield is almost 100 years old producer of motorcycle. Used to be British, and eventually the British had a factory in India, and when the British decolonized India, they left Royal Enfield in India, and so India kept producing Royal Enfield, and now they're actually the official, for 40 years, they are the official producer of Royal Enfield. Royal Enfield was mostly selling those motorcycles to India and not so much overseas, a little bit. And so now you can find them pretty much in every country. And they are a little bit of a nostalgia type of motorcycle. But not only. More recently, they launched the model called the Himalaya, which is a sort of it's not a dirt road, it's like an enduro. It's like road and dirt road type of a motorcycle, which is so much not expected from Royal Enfield, who are much more famous for what's called the Bullet here. So the Bullet is their cash cow. It's the motorcycle that sort of look like the same motorcycle that the British people were selling and producing before World War II and after World War II. And they've kept the same motorcycle. When the Indian took over this business that was abandoned by Great Britain, they kept producing the same motorcycle with the same name called the Bullet. You can still buy today a Bullet, which is 90% the same as it was 50 years ago, with the same tradition and all that. I mean, the tank are hand painted and everything is handmade and all that. It's kind of cool. You go on YouTube and you can see videos of them making it, and you think it's 50 years ago, but that's today. They're making it the old way. And then they improved in this, creating the Interceptor. So the Interceptor was like a modern version of the Bullet. But even though it's modern as far as Royal Enfield can make a modern motorcycle. So it's not modern in today's Honda, BMW standard. So it's not old enough, I guess, and it's not modern enough. So it's sort of sitting in between, and that's why, therefore, it's a dilemma. And then they also make a moped, which is the cheapest, and it's called the Mofa, which is, I mean, let's say, I think, very unattractive but very inexpensive, and which is their dog, because maybe it was not so much the dog before when they didn't have the Himalaya, but the fact that they created the Himalaya created the Mofa as definitely becoming the dog. So the Himalaya is the most successful product that they have right now, and it's the fastest growing because it's multi-usage. So people are sort of looking for more practical hybrid things where they can go on the road and go from, I don't know, Phoenix to Los Angeles. And at the same time, if they take a dirt road for one afternoon, they go in a desert or whatever, they can still use it. So it's more flexible type of vehicle. And the price in that category is unbeatable. I think this motorcycle is like $6,000 for a new one, Himalaya, which is by far the cheapest dirt enduro motorcycle that you can buy. And because it's made in India, this thing can be beat up and it still functions and all that, because they have those kind of standards there. So here is the representation using rail and field, which I created. I just created this thing. It's not from the internet. And to show you that you can take any company and looking at what they're doing. And sometimes it's not so obvious on what, without being part of the company. Sometimes you have to be part of the company in order to do a BCG matrix, because you need really internal data to make up your mind. But with a little bit of guessing and so forth, you can look at the portfolio and be able to place it. So if you were to say, let's say if Califia Farms was making milk, traditional milk, is maybe their traditional milk would be the dog. And then if they had the standard almond milk, could be it could be either the cash cow or the dilemma. It's also called the problem child. It's the same thing, is the dilemma or the question mark. And so a bit more study would have to look at it, because you have to look at all the portfolio, and then you will look at the product that they've launched much more recently, which is more innovative, and that would take the place of the star. So having a BCG is very good. Why would you want to have a BCG? Anyone could answer this question. Matrix. Why would you want to have a BCG matrix? And here you have the slide that gives you the answer. It's because you want to know how to balance your portfolio in terms of the resources that you want to allocate to the different products. So those products oftentimes are called your SKUs. So the SKU will get more or less resources based on its position inside the BCG, in terms of investing more, in keeping the investment, in disinvesting, or just in harvesting and waiting to see where that product will go next. Beside the BCG, there's another matrix, which is called the GE matrix, if you want. So it's General Electric matrix. The GE and the BCG are essentially the same thing. The difference is the fact that the G gives you more nuances, because instead of being four quadrants, the GE is 8 quadrants. So that's the only thing, is there's a middle. So instead of being high or low, if you want, is you have a high, medium, and low. So in some way, the G is better because it gives you an indication, because if you go back to what you do with this, here it tells you build, harvest, divest, hold. That's using the BCG. But when you are not on the extreme end, I mean, this is when you are on the extreme end in a way. But what if you are in between? If you are in between, you can take a decision to make a change in order to shift. So you could be sitting in between different sections as well. So a bit more precise is the GE, but the BCG is a simple version that may be just good enough. Now, benchmarking, what is that? Benchmarking is part of marketing research. Benchmarking is this idea that you want to compare yourself with your competitors. What are we doing? What are they doing? Is there something that we're doing better than them? Is there something that they are doing better than us and that we can learn to do better by analyzing how they are doing it, so we can match, so we can understand the set of objective strategies, their strengths and weaknesses, and also the target that they're focusing on, the image that they're going after, are very, very important. So benchmarking, here's a little list. So this list is not inside the summary guide. It's not even inside the book. This list is because, I mean, that, as much as I said that I think sometimes physical classes should have 1 or 2 Zoom classes, I think I sometimes should bring things which are not inside the textbook, as long as I'm not putting pressure on you to remember everything, which I don't. For the quiz. For the quiz, I will ask questions that are very much like the main things, the boiler point, and I won't go into the very minute details. But because you're business students, I think you should have a bigger spectrum, and a professor, if the professor actually do what they preach, should have their own perspective on things. And so here's one of my perspective: the 11 key points for benchmarking. So obviously, you're looking at you listing your competitors, and so when you list them, you're looking at the indirect and direct competitors, and sometimes you can even have a third, which is the future competitors, because you may be planning to make some changes, and when you make these changes, they may change the map of who's your competitors, and there may be someone new now that you're making some changes. Obviously, you're doing a SW, strengths and weaknesses, on your competitors. You're trying to identify and guess their strategies and their objectives. You're trying to define who are their customers, and through the lens of who are their targets, which is a much more precise and professional way to discuss about their customers. Another thing is you try to identify what's their positioning. Positioning means the meaning of the brand in the mind of the consumers. So what do they think is the meaning of that brand? You look at their prices. So prices is very important. That's kind of a 101 of benchmarking, because it's such a key element. You're trying to see where they sell and the methods of selling. So which website do they sell, but also what are the methods that they use to sell? Are they using a cell phone? Are they using the internet? Are they using private pyramidal retail store or whatever channels? Then you're trying to see if they are innovative, if they have many new products, if they have a large quantity of products, and you're trying to see how many they have in certain market share. So you're doing a BCG matrix for their products, also to anticipate. You're also looking at their trade leverage, which means who do they buy the raw material? Who are their suppliers? And how much they are buying from these suppliers. So you're guessing all of these things. You're trying to see if they are doing everything, or if they're using intermediaries. Who do they collaborate with? Are there any staff that they have that are particularly brilliant that you would want to maybe hire at one stage, or sort of analyze? You analyze sometimes the key people that make the decision in order to preempt their decisions. I mean, that's what they do in military. You analyze who are the generals, and see what they're doing before. So this mentality of benchmarking is very much of a mentality of someone who is an athlete. It's like you playing volleyball, and you're going to go against a volleyball team. You're going to see who are the people they're going to have in that team that day, and you're going to have some kind of analysis on how these people work. If there is a weakness in their game, if there's an area which is going to have too much attack and not enough defense or something like this, and you're going to play not against the attack, if that's really good, you're going to play out against their defense if that's the weakest point. So when you go to a battle, you don't go there thinking that you are the best. When you go to a battle, you don't go there thinking the enemy is weak and stupid. You go there imagining the worst, and you prepare to win by really analyzing as much as you can, but not over analyzing as well, because if you do that, you lose a lot of time. But you have to do a minimum. And in military, it's that way. In business, it's that way as well. So then the final one, the number 11, is when you benchmark, obviously you do your competitors, but you can also look at the industry overseas and see that overseas they may be doing things that they will eventually do in your country. Maybe overseas, they are ahead of the time. Maybe they have innovated. Someone who's not a competitor in your market, who could be a competitor if you were in their market, has already come up with innovation. And what you may want to do is be inspired by this innovation. Another thing that's even more interesting but harder to do is to look at other industries. So see if there's something. So you are in the almond milk industry, and you're obviously looking at all of this milk, which is indirect competitor, and almond milk, which is the direct competitor, and you're saying, you know what else could we look at? Well, maybe there's other elements that could be interesting. You could look at the beverage industry. What are they doing in the beverage? The soda industry, the water industry. And there you could see that they're doing adding, I don't know, vitamins to the water or calcium to the water. And then you say, hey, could we do that in the milk? And so you could be borrowing from one industry to another, um, even though they are not competitors. So in the situation of a beverage industry, everyone is your competitor, but it's just a question of proximity. So you could drink milk, or you could drink Red Bull, or you could drink water, and all of this in to some extent is competing against one another. Do you have any questions on the benchmarking? Okay, so how can I find opportunities in the SWOT? How can I find opportunities in benchmarking? So is it an opportunity to say my competitor so and so is doing X? Is this an
Uh,
opportunity?
I think so.
Yes, it is, but can you say it this way?
No.
No, because if your competitor is doing something, that doesn't mean it's an opportunity. If your competitor is jumping from a bridge, does that mean that you have to jump from that bridge? No. So what happens is if you see a competitor doing something, you try to identify the opportunity that made them do what they're doing. And so what it is, it saves you time. Let them do the research, find the opportunity, and then do something. And then what they are doing, you can see. And from this, you can reverse engineer what was the reason why they are doing it. And then the reason why they are doing it also becomes your opportunity. The only problem is that that opportunity will be, um, I mean, let's say you make cigarettes, you sell cigarettes. And then you say, oh, we have a competitor that sells cigarettes with a filter. Let's sell cigarettes with a filter. No, 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 that's not how it works. Is why are they selling cigarettes with a filter? Let's see. And then you find that they sell cigarettes with a filter because they find that some people want to remove the nicotine, and the nicotine eventually gives you cancer. So then you go, the opportunity is some people want to smoke, but they want to limit the chances of getting cancer. And the outcome of that is to sell cigarettes with a filter. You can, every example you can find, anything can be correct like that. The problem is if you have your competitors already doing it, you'll have to do it a little bit different. You can't be doing it exactly. So sometimes you do it, and because your competitor is so successful that there's not enough of their cigarette with filters, that you can have take advantage of the situation because there's a shortage, and then you do the exact same thing, almost the same thing, and you can be successful by the fact that they've created a new um, need, or a new way to satisfy an existing need that everybody wants, but they are so successful that they can't supply. And then you come and you have the same supply, and you just gain because they've created a vacuum. I mean, I know this exists. Um, One day I will tell the student, not now, but uh, maybe in 2026, I will tell the student, remember Pfizer and Moderna, the vaccine. You know, there's Pfizer sold so much so fast, there's not enough. So Moderna comes and does the exact same thing and can do it maybe with a small noticeable difference, which is the vaccine lasts a little longer once it's out of the factory. It doesn't have to be kept at minus 70 uh, degree or whatever. So you there's not one thing that I can say that works 100% of the time for everything and everyone, but you have to understand the cause and effects and use your common sense to understand how the things varies. Okay, so marketing is like this. You have to use your common sense. So tactics and strategies are not the same thing. What is the difference between tactics and strategies? What's the big difference between tactics and strategies?
It seems like tactics are like the actions you take to like the actions you take to perform your strategy, I guess.
Yes,
Like
to
yeah, like an
achieve.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I meant to say.
Exactly. So that's correct. So tactics are the smaller activities that will complete the objectives of your strategy. Yeah. So the strategy is the big direction, and the tactics are the smaller steps in order to fulfill the big direction. So there's many more tactics than there are strategies. You could say there's 2, 3 strategies and there's 1,000 tactics. So this 1 equals 2 is not representative. It's just, the green strategy generates many more yellow tactics in order to be fulfilled. The strategy is almost something that you say that you're going to do that essentially takes a year to do. So it takes a year to do the strategy, and it takes 365 days to make the strategy work. And what you do every day for 365 days, if you want, are 365 tactics. So I try to explain in many different ways for some of these ways to stick to some people. So yeah, 365 days make a year. A year equals a tactic, 365 days equals a year equals a strategy, 365 days equals a tactic. So it converges to the strategies. When you make these decisions and those actions, those daily actions, you have different strategies for your product in your BCG. And therefore, you're going to have different resources being involved. So stars will take more resources and more actions. So if there's 365 days, you're going to have 365 days working on the stars. You're going to have half of that working on the dilemma or the cash cow, and you're going to have 10% of that working on your dogs. So resources will be also the same. $1 million, it's 100,000 on the dogs, 1 million on the star. And if you think about which one is older product, which one is more recently launched, the stars tend to be more recently launched, and the dogs tends to be product that you've launched a while. But it's not 100% true, because that's the rule, but it's not 100% true because it could be a product that is a dog from the get-go. Why would a product be a dog from the get-go? Because you overestimated an opportunity, for example, and it didn't pan out as much as you thought. Or it's because you came after this opportunity too late, or when you came, the environment changed and you were not fast enough to adapt. So therefore, if you launched it today, that would have been a star, but you launched it 2 months after, and by that time there was some modification needed to be done, and you didn't modify because, you see, that's the problem within businesses. Sometimes the businesses are very heavy to make changes. So businesses are very heavy if they are very hierarchical, if they are sort of a non-profit, if they are government-owned, government-regulated, or if the management is sort of very traditional or very risk-averse. And that's this situation, you have to be in a market that doesn't require a lot of constant adaptation. Someone that works in the fashion industry, you wouldn't want to be someone who is risk-averse, someone who is slow to make decisions, because in the fashion industry, you have 4 seasons that you have to work on. And you don't work at it the day before, but you work at it a year or more than a year before. So you have to anticipate what people are going to want. Like right now in the 24th of February, you're working for winter 2022, if not summer 2022. So you're in a different time, looking at what people are going to want, and you getting rid of the things, and you have to move on. And there's no nostalgia. You have to keep moving on, keep moving on. But that's why a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to work in the fashion." But to work in the fashion, you have to like changes, and you have to like this constant chaos and this constant anticipation of what's going to happen next. All right, any questions? So this graph, this image that you see right now, I don't go into much details on what they are, because there is concepts which are going to be discussed, like the product life cycle concept that we'll discuss in like 3 weeks or something like this. So I don't want to be doing the class that we'll do in 3 weeks specifically, but I wanted you to see that when you run a business and you have strategies, your strategies, they evolve with the product age, which means that if it's before you introduce it compared to when the product is declining, and if it's declining, when we talk about the BCG matrix, that's what we would call the dog, versus when we introduce, that could be a dilemma or a star if you're the first one to introduce, and therefore you are in a high growth, high market share. So when you explain marketing, you can't isolate things so much by explaining concept per concept without talking about multiple concepts at the same time. In economics, that's what they do, is they isolate the concept, they talk about each concept as separately as possible. Marketing is more empiric, marketing is more practiced, and therefore we have to talk about multiple concepts at the same time. So what are the most famous strategies? Is the ENSOF 4 basic strategies, but there are other ones. There's also another one called the basic competitive strategies from an author called Porter. So Porter is a professor of marketing as well, and he came up with these 4 basic strategies something like 40 years ago. So simply said, is the overall cost leadership is the cheapest. You want to have the cheapest product for sale. Focus is you want to sell it for a specific group of people. So you don't sell it to everybody. There's a specific group that you sell the product to. Then differentiation is this product will be very different. So obviously by being very different, it's going to appeal to a specific group of people. So when you do differentiation, the outcome oftentimes is that you will have some focus strategy at the same time. And then the middle of the road is you don't have a very defined, a strong personality in your strategy. You're trying to sort of follow. You're trying to go after the standard, the majority of the people. So using examples, Walmart will be the overall cost leadership, trying to be the supermarket with the lowest prices. Then the focus, a specific group of people. I think Subaru fits very well. It's not a car for everyone. There's a group of people, they absolutely love the Subarus. And some of the people don't even know that it's a car. And then differentiation is the way it works. So I think this brand of shoe, Mephisto, has a very, very, very different design. I would say it's not a design that young people will find very attractive. It tends to be older people that like the Mephistos. And then the middle of the road is using a hotel line like Holiday Inn or maybe the Hilton. It's not the Four Seasons, it's not Motel 6. It is not a very specific a strategy that will be overall cost leadership or a specific group of people. It's more of an overall way of going about it. Other strategies are operational excellence, is where the way business is run works very, very well. It must be related to the services. So the services are very good. Customer intimacy is the relationship that you have with your customers. So not only you know your customers, but they know you. So there's a lot of relationship, a lot of exchange, and it allows the company to really try to satisfy them very well because they know them very well. So there's a lot of trust in that relationship with customers. Product leadership it's going to be that you will be the pioneer as much as possible, creating the new product that will be the new concept, the new paradigm that people will want to have. So Sony used to be very much the pioneer in the electronics. Now I think that role has moved to Apple. And so it's like a cycle. It's impossible to think that Apple will maintain this role. Eventually, that role will pass to someone else. And so in technology, if you have brands like that that are very much being perceived the pioneer, and it's just a very difficult position to keep. But it, overall cost leadership is also a very difficult position to keep because being the cheapest means that you have less profit. And so you have less profit, you know to be the cheapest, but at the same time, you cannot talk about the fact that you're the cheapest. And so that makes it very difficult. I'm sort of blown away by McDonald's. I heard this week and last week advertising $2 menu and this kind of things. Can you imagine a meal for $2 and having to advertise a meal for $2? How much does it cost them? I mean, what is it really that they're serving? I just wonder what can you do with $2? Maybe the strategy is they don't make that much money with the $2, but they hope people to get to buy something else while they come to get the $2. I think the idea is people go there because they hear the $2, but they buy a sundae or they get a large size drink or whatever, and this is where they make more margin. Maybe on the $2 they make 5% margin or even less, but maybe on the large size drink they make 90%. And so there's got to be some way, but when you are in this kind of businesses, it's everything is about accounting essentially. Everything is about the cost, and you're running very very tight ship, and so it's also very dangerous. The last four strategies are market leadership, which means that you have the biggest market share. Market challenger, which is that you take the position of being like the leader, but maybe with a small difference. Market follower is you follow, it's a little bit what we call the middle of the road for the porter. And then the market nicher is the same as focus. So these are the most common one, but there's similarity between this one and that one, because here it's focus, the other one says nicher is the same thing, follower on one side, middle of the road on the other. So even these authors were very much following one another. So as a summary for a lot of things that I discussed so far is you know about satisfaction, you know about value, you know about the benefit of having a relationship marketing, which is to build the trust and continue the business in the sense that you minimize the marketing and you maximize the satisfaction. You know about a set of strategies, the Porter strategies, the basic competitive strategies, the end-soft strategies, which is penetration, market development, new product development, and diversification, and then the importance of benchmarking and competitor orientation. So all of these terms and concepts should be somewhat familiar after today.